Okay, so first, let's take a look at the first question. We have 1, 5, and we need to find the magnitude of this vector. So the magnitude is basically Pythagorean theorem. That's all we're doing. So we're going to say that these are the numbers that we're going to use in Pythagorean theorem. Can you guys see that? So we're going to say that the magnitude is the square root of, because Pythagorean theorem, we have to take a square root at the end, right? So 1 squared plus 5 squared. What's 1 squared? 1. And 5 squared. So the magnitude is the square root of 26. Are we okay with that? All right, so once we have that, now we're going to say, let's find the angle. We already said that to find the direction angle, we're going to use the inverse tangent. So tangent -1. So that -1 always means that we're reversing some trig function to get the angle. We know that we have to do y divided by x. So our y value in this case was 5. So it's going to be the arctangent of 5 over 1. And so that's going to give us, all right, can somebody put that in the calculator, tell us what we get? Okay, so you said 78 point. All right, so that's what we have. So if we have this vector, let's say we did the question 3. So question 3, we have -11 and -10. And what we want is to find the magnitude. So we're going to start this off the same way, right? So what are we doing with the -11 and the -10? Square root, and what are we doing to each of them? Squaring them. So it's going to be 11 squared or -11 squared plus -10 squared, right? All right, so that's going to be, what is that? 121 plus 100. And that's really the square root of what? 221. All right, so we're going to leave it like that because square root of 221 does not have any, it's not a perfect square. So next we'll find the direction angle. So same formula, arctangent of y over x. So it'll be what? What two numbers? And -11, right? So when we put that in the calculator, what does it give us? Okay, so 42.27. So what's going to happen is we have to check to make sure this is the right angle. When you graph -11, -10, what quadrant is that in? It's in the third quadrant because you'd have to go, this number says go left, this one says go down, right? So we're in the third quadrant. When you graph this angle, 42.27, what quadrant is that one in? It's in the first quadrant. So that's where it would be. So these angles are in different places, so clearly they don't represent the same values. So how do we get this dotted value to represent the solid one? Add 180. So we have to move by 180 to get to the correct answer. So what we need to do is to add 180 to this. So our final answer is going to be what? What's the final answer? So that's it. All right, so dot product. So we have what? 5, -1 dotted with -9, 2. How do we do the dot product? Okay, so 5 times -9 then, right? So multiply the x's. So 5 times -9 is going to be -45. Then what else? So plus. So -1 times 2. So -2. So what's that going to be? -47. That's the dot product. Okay, so next question, we want to find out if the vectors, let's say we did question 9. So -2, 9, and the vectors 1, -9/2. We want to see if those are parallel, if they're perpendicular, we can also call that orthogonal.
Like, let's say I have 2/1 and I have -2/1. That's
2/1 and what else? 2/1 and -2/1. Okay, so you're saying what if you have a slope that's 2/1 and another one that's -2/1? So these wouldn't be parallel. It would have to actually be exactly the same to be parallel. To be perpendicular. Oh yeah. So to be perpendicular, you would have 1/2 and -2/1. So these would be perpendicular.
It's like negative positive.
Yes. Okay. So in this case, if we want to find out if they're parallel, one way we can check is basically just find the slopes. So the slope of u is going to be 9/-2, and the slope of v is going to be -9/2/1. So we're basically putting the y's over the x's. So yeah, this one is just the negative of whatever 9/2 is, so 4.5, right? This one is the same thing because you divide by 1, it's going to be the same. So it's still just -9/2. So because they're the same, we're going to say that these are parallel. So let's say we did number 8. So question 8, we have 4, -2, and the other vector is 8, 16. So let's check the slopes first. So the slope on u, it would be what over what? -2/4, and the slope on v would be what? Are these equal? So they're not equal, so they can't be what? Parallel. They're not parallel. So to check if they're perpendicular or orthogonal, what do we do with the vectors? The dot product.
It has to equal 0, right?
And the dot product has to equal 0. So what's 4 times 8?
32.
And what's -2 times 16? -32. We add that, that's going to be 0. So the dot product is 0. We're going to say that this is perpendicular, which we can also say orthogonal. All right, you guys okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, so on question 11, the first thing that we're going to do here is we have two vectors. One is 5, -4, and the other one is 6, -7. All right, we need to find out what u minus v is. So this is just subtraction. So you're subtracting the x's. So if you do 5 minus 6, what is that? -1. Then we're going to subtract the y's. What's -4? Subtract -7. Don't forget the minus and the negative. It's 3. So that means that this answer, this vector, is going to be -1, 3. All right, so what was that? 13, right? So u equals -4, 5, and we're asked to work out 6u. So 6 times each of these would give us -24 and 30. That's it. Okay, so question 14. All right, we're going to have a triangle here. Terrible triangle. All right, you know. See, I know this is 40 degrees. Help me out on the other ones. What is this?
And then 45 degrees.
So yeah, how'd you get 45? What do all three of these angles do? They add up to 180. So add and subtract to 180. So you're going to end up with 45 here.
Wait, no, that's not it.
All right, so we're asked to find also lowercase b and lowercase c. The initial information gave us a side, an angle, and an angle. So side, angle, angle. This is automatically going to be law of sines, because the only time that we're going to have law of cosines is if it's side, 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 or what else? Or side, angle, side. Exactly. So for what we're going to do is law of sines. So we're going to put b over the sine of b. So it's going to be b over the sine of 45 equals, and then we put the two that we know. So it'll be 12 over sine of 95. So we're going to multiply sine of 45 on both sides to get rid of the sine of 45. So these will cancel. And so we're going to end up with b equals a certain value. I believe it's 8.5, right? But yeah, I think it's 8.5. You repeat this process for C. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So on question 18, what we have is the vector u, which is 1, 5, and we need to find the unit vector in this direction. So what we need to do is to find the magnitude first. Remember, the magnitude, we're basically just doing Pythagorean theorem. So this would be our A, that would be our B. So we're going to do 1 squared. We're going to add that with 5 squared. And then if you recall in Pythagorean theorem, we have to take a square root at the end. So we're taking the square root of that. So this is going to be the square root of 1 plus 25. In other words, the magnitude is the square root of 26. So to find the unit vector, this particular vector is length square root of 26. So if we divide by that same number, that will give us 1 for the length. So the unit vector will basically be the same vector, except that we're dividing everything by the magnitude, which is square root of 26. All right, so on question 22, we have x is equal to 3t and y is equal to t plus 7. So when it says eliminate the parameter, we have to make a choice on which one is easier to solve for, either the x or the y. It's the same amount of work, so let's say we did the y. So that means that for y equals t plus 7, we have to subtract 7 from both sides to get t by itself. So in other words, y minus 7 is equal to t. So since t is y minus 7, we're going to take that y minus 7 and put it back into the t on the other equation. So it's basically x is equal to 3 times y minus 7. So when we distribute, it's going to be 3y minus 21. So that's our rectangular form. So on question 23, we have, first of all, that x is equal to the square root of t, and that y equals 2t plus 5. So we want to pick the equation that has the least amount of work to do. So we're going to pick this one, because all we have to do is just square both sides. So if we square both sides, the left side is going to become x squared, and the right side would just become t. So now that we know what t is equal to, we're going to take this value and put it back into the other equation. So basically we have y equals 2 times x squared plus 5, and that's our rectangular form.